We are so thrilled to share with you a summary of our recently completed fiscal year ending June 30th of 2021. And then we're going to look ahead at the coming year. So I'm going to hand off to our board chair, Bill Butzik, in just a moment. And then we'll have some organizational and financial updates, community connections, and then a conservation report. We're going to speak about the merger and dissolution of the Coudray Waters Regional Land Trust over the past year. And we're going to share an overview of our recently approved strategic plan. And then we'll move ahead to conservation projects underway in our current year, 2021 to 2022, concluding with questions and discussion. So at this point, I'm going to hand off to Bill Butzik. Bill, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself. We're grateful for Bill's leadership as our board chair, and take it away.
Okay, well, thanks, Kristen. It is my pleasure to welcome and thank everyone for joining us for our Landmark Conservancy's annual meeting. And what an exciting year it has been for land protection and for our land trust. I think you can see from the meeting agenda, we've got some very exciting things to share with you. You know, Jane, my wife, and I have been, we live on the Red Sea River just north of Menominee. We were married in Ashland the year after Jane graduated from Northland College. So in some ways, it seems like just yesterday, but actually it was 1974. And we both love the special places that we have in the 20 communities, 20 counties that Landmark works to protect. You know, we've got just some spectacular places to visit and to live here in our Northwest Wisconsin. And one aspect of living during the pandemic has been the recognition of the importance of the outdoors and the need to protect and to cherish as many of our special environmental locations as possible. And of course, this has made Landmark Conservancy's mission more relevant than ever, but it's also made for an incredibly busy year, which you will hear about shortly. What I'd like to do is take a few minutes to acknowledge our supporters, our board and staff. So thank you, supporters. Many of you are on the Zoom call. And without your financial support and volunteer efforts, we have not been able to accomplish the fantastic conservation projects we did this year. I can't say thank you enough. I believe Landmark also has an extremely dedicated board to helping achieve our mission. One example is our last board meeting that we had was the third Thursday in August, and the meeting was held in Cable to support the Telemark Preserve project. Now, Cable is a nice place, and being a Berkey skier, it's close to my heart. However, it has to average almost 2 hours of travel for most of our board. And we have a 15-member board, and 11 members made the trip, and the 4 others joined with Zoom for 100% attendance during the peak of summer. So thank you, board, for your commitment. Landmark staff have more opportunities and challenges presented to them this year than I could imagine. And I'm excited to hear from them. So I would just say a sincere thank you to our staff, Lindsay, Kristen, Rick, Erica, Andrew, Sarah, Michelle, Tommy, Jimmy, and Aaron, who just went off to go to UW Stout for her master's. So I'd like to thank you for your professionalism, hard work, and dedication during this extremely busy year. So speaking of staff, let me introduce our dedicated conservation leader, our executive director, Lindsay Ketchell. Lindsay, take it away.
Thanks, Bill. And thank you all again for taking some time out of this beautiful, sunny, gorgeous September day. I personally wish we were meeting in person. This is very difficult and has been a part of, I think, what we've been dealing with COVID and some of the challenges is needing to do more Zoom, having the distance that we've had. But we've been really surprised and almost overwhelming, amazed at the support and just interest in the work that we do in general over this past year. And thank you all, because it's a collective effort. And I think that our theme is about celebrating our partnerships and our collaborators. And we can't do anything without your support and alignment. And we're excited to share today about that work. I'm just going to talk about a few couple measures of successes that we've been looking at. One thing I'm excited about as we continue to recruit new high quality new board members. And that's so important for our board vitality. We have some board members who move off. We have some new board members who move on. But what I've just been observing, and Bill shared a little bit earlier, the commitment, the dedication, their skills and interest in our work is just outstanding. So we're very fortunate. I also have to tell you, though, that during the year of COVID, we were very fortunate to receive a Paycheck Protection Plan loan. These were important donations, or sorry, they were loans that get converted to a grant that provided, while the funds were about $99,000, it was really the emotional support that helped us, I think, also with such uncertainty of how we were going to be received, and more importantly, how folks were going to be able to continue to support our work with so much uncertainty. We've also been extremely gracious and fortunate to secure a number of land donations. And Rick Remington and Erica, our conservation staff, are on the front lines, providing great assistance as landowners are trying to work through what to do with their lands and look at land donations. We also are delighted, and we thank very much our partners at Gathering Waters and all of you who worked so hard to ensure that our Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program got reauthorized. I recently received a letter from the governor stating Knowles Nelson Stewardship is the most critical investment the state is making when it comes to climate and the resiliency work we're involved in, and we can't do it without these critical dollars. So thank all of you. It is a 4-year reauthorization. And also we've enhanced our landmark communications. Kristen and Sarah are a big part of it, and the proof is in the pudding. Next slide. And I said, Kristen, I do my part in 5 minutes, so I'll go quick. There's a lot to talk about tonight, so we're so excited. Some more of our organizational progresses we've made. Been able to provide some operational reserves, which aren't that sexy, but critical. Most nonprofits were running businesses and looking at the word in perpetuity. So we have to be extremely careful with our fundraising, and we made some significant stewardship investments, as also our investments did very well this last year. You're going to hear a lot of more in depth, but we were delighted when Coudray Waters Regional Land Trust approached us to consider us acquiring their assets and building a significant synergy and partnership in that region. And Carol, who's now serves on our board, will share a lot more detail. You're going to hear about our strategic plan. It's not, most people don't get too excited about strategic planning, but I will tell you this is a plan that we own, will work with and invest and implement every month. And our board will be modifying and adjusting and aware of our progress. This is not a plan that will collect dust. We were invested in some targeted landowner outreach, and then we're also investing in new staff. And one of our most important new staff members is Michelle. We hired her to be our operational manager. We found, as we were looking internally at our operations, that we really need to make another investment to ensure our operations were going smoothly as we prepare next year for reaccreditation and all the other important needs that we have operationally. And then you'll hear a little bit more. We'll be investing in the future in expanding 2 new conservation staff. For our landowner outreach, again, this has to do with the resiliency and climate work. Over the last 2 or 3 years, you've heard us at these annual meetings talk about our prioritization process that we've gone through. We've identified our focus areas that we see the most important work to protect, to build resiliency and biodiversity. We then identified 3 target areas to conduct our mailings, which we have secured and completed 2 of those mailings, and we're about finished with the 3rd. We're pretty excited with the results so far, and you'll learn more as we talk later this afternoon about some of those results. We are also still in the process of doing some thoughtful follow-ups, phone calls, and site visits. And Rick will tell you, these projects take a long time. Some projects happen very quickly. Some projects take a really long time. When I talk about a project, a landowner interested in doing some land protection on their property. And we like to go slow and work at the pace of the landowner. and make it a high quality experience for them. Back to my theme, core partnerships, essential to our success. I just wanted to take a couple minutes and with our resiliency work we're involved in, Gathering Waters and the Nature Conservancy have been essential and critical to this work. And in fact, I was just working on a PowerPoint. We'll be presenting some of our work at Rally coming up in October. Looking at a regional resiliency approach, we've had initial meetings and very positive movement forward, working with the Northwoods Land Trust, Kinnicott River Land Trust, and the Mississippi Valley Conservancy to build even a stronger, more vibrant regional approach. And then our strategic alliances with the Conservation Fund and the Land Trust Alliance, we can't do this work without them. So we're so grateful for their support. This is key project collaborators, and Rick will get into a lot more detail as we go along. This past year, the Gull Lake Campground was a huge initiative on our behalf, and Love Lake Association, the Minerva Cranberry Lake Association, and the Minerva Chain of Lakes made it all happen. The Brownstone in the Big Ravine, we've got some challenges facing us with the Brownstone, but we're so grateful that we have the Bayfield Area Trails Group, the City of Bayfield, the county, Wisconsin Coastal Program, all working to help us and assist us with that effort. And then a new initiative that was somewhat not necessarily on our radar screen, but popped into our radar screen was the opportunity to partner and be a part of the Telemark Preserve Protection. We're working with the America Burkabina Ski Foundation, which is a very significantly large organization, very well recognized and very well known. And we think will be an excellent opportunity for more people to learn about our work. We have the Wild Rivers Conservancy, Wild Rivers chapters of Trout Unlimited and Gathering Waters. And just finally, when we think about Landmark's conservation vision, we always like to think about it within the frame of, is it targeted? Is there community? Is it a community partnership focused? Is it anchored in climate resiliency? Is it expanding our conservation complexes? Are we assessing landowner readiness so they're ready to go when our staff is ready to go? And we're constantly applying science and local knowledge as we build that vision. And we thank you all for all that you do to make this happen. And then I get the honor of talking about the money. So we've got two slides here. These are our end of year money financials. And the balance sheet indicates that we have about 1.458 million in stewardship investments. We've got 720,000 secured in our checking, but some of those are restricted funds. And then our current assets are about 2.17 million. Our operating income this past year, thanks to all of this great support, we ended up almost over $900,000 of funds came in this last year. Individuals were critical, organizational support. We tapped into some of our stewardship reserve, and we had some significant government grants, including the PPP, come in. Our expenses stayed relatively, I'd say, flat as they've been for the last 3 years. So we did about 667,000 in expenses. And so you can see we had a surplus. That's typically a positive thing, especially in this case, because that 251,000 actually will go towards initiatives we'll be doing this fall when we work on the Devil's Punch Bowl, stairs. The Coudray Waters provided us some stewardship funds that we reinvested and provided some additional donations. We have some restricted funds on the Brownstone plus the PP grants. But overall, the work that we do is really a combination of land transactions, our operations, and our restricted stewardship. And Rick would be the first one to tell you these numbers don't at all equate to the properties, how amazing this work is. But overall, we did 2.7 million impact organizationally, and that's pretty good for a small staff and just 3 years out of a merger. And I guess that was the other big nice aha, as we've grown up where we're no longer happy to have the merger story be part of our annual meeting. So thanks, Kristen, for moving us along with that slide and that part of our history. And then just the financial trends, this is what I like to look at. You'll see over the years, just nice, steady increases. And this is all because of your support, the board's hard work, all of us collectively. We've been able to add some operating reserve, but you'll just see that the general income is rising steadily and good incremental movements. Our operating expenses are flat, but those will go up because we are investing in more staff right now, especially the 2 conservation positions and the operational manager. And then I also want to point out that our stewardship funds, but we also have non-agency stewardship funds. And so really it's a combination of both the stewardship and the stewardship non-agency that gives you a total picture of our investments. And again, we're here in perpetuity. So while these numbers may seem big, when you're looking at it in perpetuity and the amount of lands that we have to protect, we're good, we're in good shape, but we can always use a little more. And with that, Sarah, nope,
Yep, I just need to unmute myself here, Lindsay. I have the pleasure to introduce Sarah Norman. She is our community outreach coordinator, and she had the unique challenge of spearheading some new initiatives during a COVID year. So kudos to Sarah for navigating that with the utmost of integrity and thoughtfulness. So I'm going to hand this off to Sarah, and she will give you a little taste of what has gone on over the past year and a vision of what's ahead.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Sarah, I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator, and I'm delighted to give you a brief overview of the ways that we engage the community in our work. So this isn't meant to be all encompassing of everything that we've done over the past year, but it should give you a snapshot. Engaging the community is a whole staff effort, and everybody in the organization has a role in these endeavors. Of course, we thought critically about how to safely engage people during the pandemic, as Kristen and Lindsay and Bill have all mentioned. And there have been many conversations amongst our staff and board about how to navigate this strange time. But we've had one thing on our side, and that's that we work in the outdoor field where there's plenty of room to spread out. So yes, our staff did more virtual presentations than in a normal year. And we also made some videos for online viewing. But once the world started to open up, we also had the pleasure of holding more in-person outdoor events. Next slide. So I'd like to start off by talking about the many roles that volunteers of all ages fill in our organization. Here on the left are Northland College students out at the Big Ravine in Bayfield, Wisconsin, contributing to trail building work. The next photo is board member Bob Durfee and kiosk builder extraordinaire out at Sisquit River Preserve, putting up a kiosk so that we can hang up new signage. The next photo is of volunteers literally crawling on the forest floor to remove invasive garlic mustard. Just one example of us doing invasive species work with volunteers. And then the next photo is of a family who came out to help pick up trash at the Devil's Punch Bowl in Menominee, Wisconsin. Next slide, please. So here's another photo of students doing trail building, this time at Tyler Forks Community Forest. We've also had ongoing volunteer work days at Maiden Rock Bluff in partnership with the DNR. Most of these days so far have been to collect seed, which will be used to expand the prairie onto the Maiden Rock Bluff addition, which is a 58 parcel of land that we have protected in the last couple of years. And then we also have volunteers who work behind the scenes. So there's a number of people who take photos for us, including Tom Anderson. And then Phil Freeman is always ready to make maps when our staff needs a helping hand. So these contributions are super helpful in our communications and in our signage efforts. Next slide, please. Every year, we're required to conduct annual monitoring visits to our 217 conservation easements. And this year, we've had 22 trained volunteers helping us with that pursuit. Sometimes we're pleasantly surprised by motivated individuals who organize themselves to improve natural areas. The photo on the bottom left here shows volunteers who removed over 2 trailer loads of tires and debris that had been littering the shoreline of Gull Lake for years. Sometimes volunteering looks like sweeping stairs at our preserves. And the next photo is of Jimmy, our intern, our 2021 intern, out doing trail work and trail building. And we could do a whole presentation just on trail building efforts that volunteers have contributed to. Bayfield Area Trails Group has been an excellent partner in Bayfield County, and Northland College students have also helped immensely. We also have Eagle Scout projects coming up and a potential trail project with the Ice Age Trail. Next slide, please. So there's so many fascinating things to learn about, and the land gives us a platform to engage the community in conservation. So these educational experiences on the land is where I think our work really comes alive. We strive to give people an opportunity to not just walk the land and spend time outside, which of course are worthy pursuits by themselves, but also to interact and to engage with the natural world on an intimate level. So to feel different types of soil between their fingers on a field trip with geologist Tom Fitz, to catch a butterfly or a grasshopper with a net and to see it up close, or to climb up on a boulder that was transported by the glaciers 10,000 years ago. We've had the pleasure of working with expert guides who volunteer their time and have specific knowledge of the natural world. Next slide, please. So at these events, we also connect people to people. We have fun, there's social gatherings, and people have a chance to meet others who share a love for nature. At one of our events this year, participants had the chance to see nearly hundreds of the federally endangered Parner blue butterflies. That's that photo in the center of your screen here. It was a really cool experience, and there was a lot of excitement. In the bottom center of your screen is a photo from this year's paddle on Cooteray and Grindstone Lakes that was led by board member Carol Heinrich, her husband Tom, and Gary Searfoss. We also had a great time at the beginner insect identification hike with board member Chuck Bomar. And all of these events have been really fun, and we hope to continue to expand these opportunities so that more people can experience the outdoors in a way that's meaningful and inspiring. Next slide, please. So it seems like someone on staff is always preparing a presentation. Like I mentioned before, this year brought more virtual presentations than in-person ones. In partnership with Northwoods Land Trust, we hosted a day of virtual presentations for Wisconsin Water Week. That's the photo in the bottom right there of Rick giving a presentation. We also gave presentations at Lake Association meetings, colleges, and to groups like Leadership Eau Claire, and many more. Next slide, please. So protected properties have provided a laboratory for students from colleges across our service area. So in addition to educational field trips, there's also been ongoing research projects, and these are just a few examples. In the center of your screen on the top there is UW-Madison landscape architecture student Billy Aikenson prepared design ideas for consideration for the Grindstone Lake Bog, which is a project that our conservation staff is assisting the Grindstone Lake Foundation with. On the far right of your screen, a very talented student, Jasmine Swagel from Northland College, did an observational and illustrated study of woody plants in winter for the Tyler Forks Community Forest, for which she hand sketched all of the images. In the middle bottom of the screen is another Northland student, Devin Booker, who conducted a mammal survey at Tyler Forks, and you can see the map of all of his trail cameras that he used to collect some of the data. On the far left here, underway right now is an ongoing shoreline inventory for the Brownstone Trail being conducted by Northland College students under the supervision and leadership of Tom Fitz. Data collection from this inventory will help us gain a better understanding of the natural resource conditions and land management concerns along the trail. Next slide, please. So establishing welcome and interpretive signage is a more passive way that we interact with the community, but we hope that these signs educate visitors, leave people inspired and excited about the natural world, and help individuals develop a sense of place and gain a greater understanding of land protection. So there's a lot of collaboration that takes place to produce these signs. So thank you to our partners and volunteers who have contributed. Next slide, please. Over the last year, we've worked on a number of videos. On the top center of the screen, is an example of one of them. We made videos for our Devil's Punch Bowl campaign and engaged a couple of professors from UW Stout to talk about the unique plant life there, geology there, and hydrology there to help make the case for our fundraising. On the far right is our 2020 intern, Adrian Bethel, who joined us after his internship over the winter. And one of his projects was to create a 5-part plant identification series. And then the other 2 photos here are examples of videos that tell landowner stories. So Avit Ix and then the Clarks. Next slide, please. One of the big accomplishments that we had this year was reaching our fundraising goal for the Devil's Punch Bowl stair replacement, and we certainly did not do it alone. We partnered with a brewery to brew a special beer called the Devil's Punch Bowl. We had a silent auction that local artists and businesses donated to, and we even had a salon sell t-shirts with proceeds going to our campaign. Next slide, please. So it's such a joy to engage the community in our work. And as you can see, support comes to us in so many ways. Every acre that we protect and every time that we're able to engage people in conservation, it starts with you, our community. So thank you. Thanks to our supporters, our field trip leaders, our partners, and our volunteers. There's so many interesting topics and places waiting for us to explore them, and we're just getting started. Next slide, please. So there's more to come. If you'd like to participate in our events, here's where you can find out about the opportunities. You can go to our website to the What's Happening page. All the events are listed there and you can register and RSVP. You can subscribe to our e-newsletter. If you have already done that, or if you do that and you don't think you're getting it, please check your junk mail. Sometimes it sneaks its way into that folder. You can follow our Instagram page and like and follow our Facebook pages. We have 4 Facebook pages, 1 for Landmark Conservancy, and then we have 3 for individual properties where we're trying to engage people more. The Brownstone Trail, Tyler Forks Community Forest, and the Devil's Punch Bowl. Next slide, please. Oh, so this is, Kristen, are you driving?
Yep, this is the What's Happening page.
Yeah, okay,
yep.
So this is the What's Happening page on our website. As you can see, the What's Happening words are in the upper right there. And then if you look kind of towards the bottom left of your screen, that's where the events are listed. So you can click on each one and learn a little bit more about them and RSVP.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Anything in conclusion, or are you all set?
I think that there's one more slide.
I don't think so. We're on to conservation report after this.
Okay, well, I will make a plug for the forest ecology hike that's coming up at Tyler Forks Community Forest this Sunday. We have about 5 spots left. It's from 10 to 2 on Sunday, September 12th. And Northland College professor of forestry, John Martin, is leading it, and it's going to be a fun time. So if you're interested, head over to our website and sign up.
Yep, and you, like Sarah said, you can go to the What's Happening tab and go to events and scroll down. Maybe that's how you ended up joining us today for the annual meeting. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. There's lots going on, and whether it's in person or virtually, we're really grateful for your interest in joining us and being involved. Next up, I am pleased to introduce our Conservation Director, Rick Remington. Let me go ahead here. Rick is going to give us a conservation report of projects accomplished and initiatives completed in the past fiscal year. Take it away, Rick.
Thanks, Kristen, and thank you, Sarah. I'm so thankful that Sarah and Kristen are part of our staff. What I'm going to show you is a lot of pictures of pretty places and water and trees and maps, and you're going to see an absence of people. So again, I'm so thankful for Kristen and Sarah who are able to show photos of the people that help make all of this happen, and their smiling faces as well. So I'm just tickled. I'm going to give a brief overview of conservation programs at Landmark, including conservation easement stewardship, the management of our existing preserves, some of our new completed projects over the last fiscal year, land transfer to partners, and then our incoming protected land from Coudray Waters. Next slide, please. So under conservation easement stewardship, I never miss an opportunity to remind people that a huge part of Landmark's ongoing work is the stewardship of our 217 and growing conservation easements. This totals over 25,000 acres. And for those of you who are, kind of map geeks like myself, the average township is 36 square miles. That's a 6 by 6 mile square, and that equals just over 23,000 acres. So we have a whole township plus under conservation easement that we have to physically monitor every year, in addition to all of the inquiries from conservation easement landowners. There's building plans, there's constantly conservation easement properties being sold and transitioned to new landowners. So we have inquiries from realtors and buyers and sellers and so forth. And the occasional infraction that we encounter when people do something they're not supposed to. As Lindsay alluded to earlier, forever is a long time, and we need to make sure we've got not only the financial resources to safeguard these lands, but also the people in place to do it. And that's a huge part of us increasing our staff over the next year. I'd say 2021 really saw a surge in activity, and I attribute it to people kind of taking a time out, especially early on in the pandemic, and maybe staying close to home, thinking, planning, not doing a lot. And this year they really came out in force, where a lot of people are tinkering with their land. I'll say they're building things, they're buying things, they're selling things, and we've seen a definite uptick in activity. One of the ways that we try to keep up with all the happenings on our conservation easement lands and our own properties is through stewardship software called Landscape. This year we piloted Landscape for the first time. I was slow to warm up to it as I watched some of our land trust neighbors over the years join on, and decided it was time for Landmark to take the plunge and enter the 21st century of stewardship. Many years ago, we of course lived in paper files and graduated to storing electronic files on our computer, storing them on zip drives and disks, ultimately on the cloud. And now we have everything at our fingertips. I can access all of our conservation easement properties and all of our owned lands right now if I want on my cell phone with the Landscape app. So this year, we're just trying to figure out the power that Landscape has and how it can help us steward all of our land. And we've selected a hand-picked group of volunteers, which Sarah alluded to earlier, to help us do that. So Andrew, our stewardship manager, has been working with a handful of people to help volunteers also pilot this Landscape software when they're out monitoring conservation easements. So a thank you goes out to all of our volunteers, including those in the pilot Landscape program. Next slide, please. So for conservation accomplishments over the last year, for those of you who joined our meeting last year about this time, you might have heard from Gail Baldwin about her and her husband Bruce's experience in working with us on the protection of their 80-acre property in Douglas County, over a decade ago. Over this past year, we worked with them to add another 160 acres, which again is something we love to do when we talk about building a conservation complex. And we took that 80-acre property to 240 acres. That encompasses all of One Buck and Newman Lakes. Next slide, please. That's not supposed to be the next slide, but okay, it'll work. There you go. Something happened. Anyway, a couple shots of their property on One Buck and Newman Lake, and a list of some of the ecological communities you find there, where we have upland and lowland hardwoods and conifers, every wetland community you can imagine in addition to the lakes. And it's adjacent to protected land. That's the Amnicon River Pines exceptional resource area, which is managed by the county. Something you're going to hear a lot more about and is climate resilience. The little graph you see on the upper end of my page there is a decision support tool that was developed by the Nature Conservancy. And we started about a year and a half, gosh, maybe 2 years ago now, working with TNC to pilot the use of this program through our ecological climate-focused resilience areas. So when you see the needle in the light green and dark green colors, that means it's a really good property. It scores really high on climate resilient attributes. It's got great local connectedness with other protected lands, and it's got a huge landscape and diversity. So as we look to new projects, I'm not saying we'll always have, projects score off the charts like this, because sometimes we'll do projects that are, I like to say the degraded woodlot behind the school. But when we're trying to make a decision about projects to go forward, this is a really helpful tool and really helps illustrate those climate resilient factors. Next slide, please. Jumping across Douglas County to the other side over near the Brule River, we had a land donation from Mr. David DeFrancesco late in the year. 80 acres. It drains to the Brule River and the Bagaman Creek, and is part of the Blueberry Swamp Conservation Opportunity Area. Next slide. Just a couple pictures of the forest and wetland communities there: Northern Dry Mesic, Northern Sedge Meadow, Tamarack Black Spruce. Again, you're not going to see any pictures in my photos, but I hope you like seeing pretty places. The interesting part of this story, next slide, please.
Oh, there you go.
One more back. There you go. Thank you. Is how much this helps Landmark. So we get contacted by a lot of people, I don't want to say daily, but probably weekly, about their interest in sometimes donating us land, selling us land, seeing land protected, and so forth. And Mr. DeFrancesco, after talking with one of our former board members, decided he wanted to help Landmark by donating this property in whatever way possible. So we could have just outright sold it. We could have kept it forever. And those are all options we have available. In this case, Mr. DeFrancesco said, you guys do whatever you want that furthers your mission the best. Part of our process in looking at every potential project we have starts with staff vetting. So Andrew and Erica and I looked closely at the property. It was outstanding. We decided, because of its composition, its location, it wasn't something we wanted to keep forever and open up to the public as a nature preserve, but it had way too much ecological value to just liquidate it as another asset. So we decided to sell it with a conservation easement in place. This way we get to see important land protected, and we get to see important operating revenue for Landmark. So we eventually accepted the donation of this property late last year. We listed it recently. We've got a conservation easement developed for it that the realtor who's representing us is aware of and sharing with potential buyers. And after a couple of weeks on the market, we have an offer on the property now. So if and when this sale goes through, we'll have another conservation easement landowner and valuable operating support for Landmark. It's just an amazing and thoughtful by Mr. DeFrancesco to recognize the necessity of not only protecting land, but of protecting Landmark. Next slide, please. So a lot of our projects take these interesting twists. There's donated easements, there's projects we buy. Gull Lake Waters was one of the more interesting projects that we've been involved with in the last couple of years. The red on the map illustrates our Love Lake Conservation Area, which is a number of holdings surrounding Love and Falk Lake in northern Burnett County, and the yellow represents conservation easements. This little guy right here, the smaller of the pink squares, represents the Gull Lake Waters project. that was put together by primarily private citizens, mostly representatives and folks who have land on the Love Lake, Falk Lake, and the Minerva chain. Next slide, please. So what we're seeing across northern Wisconsin, and this is really unfortunate, is what I'm going to call keyhole lake development. In this case, campground expansions. Developers have picked up on the fact that not only can obviously folks, buy and develop home sites and cabins on lakes, but that they can buy off-water parcels to provide that keyhole access to lake with tremendous development potential. This particular 23-acre property was a mom and pop campground for decades and had maybe 15 or so units on the property and little impact to the lake. There was no more threat from that endeavor than any other rural property. Fast forward to 2020, we had a developer purchase the property and get a conditional use permit to put in almost 90 units on that property. So all those little squares you see on 23 acres would have been a combination of small cabins, campers, park models, which are a home, and all of the boats and ATVs and traffic and people and septic and water runoff that come along with it. So we had the lake group step up. They raised a tremendous amount of money after we failed to beat back the conditional use permit and Board of Adjustment, and they went ahead and purchased the property and donated it to Landmark. It's a atypical project for us, not that we don't accept donations, but it's not a pristine piece of property. We currently have 8 tenants on the property, some of those above. Most of those tenants have been coming up here for decades. And so they know all the people on the surrounding lakes, they know each other. And we weren't about to just evict them, overnight, especially going through what they'd been through with the previous developer. So we have annual leases with them for the time being. We're going to renew those again for next year. That's our short-term plan. The midterm plan includes investigating options to see if we can shuffle some of them off to one side in order to make room for our longer-term plan of creating a lakeshore park or a nature preserve. But again, I just can't speak to the commitment of the people on those lakes, to belly up and purchase this property. And I think I heard it said a number of times how, they had seen other generations do this on Love Lake particular over the decades and decided it was their turn. And they didn't look to Landmark necessarily to raise the money and save them. They did it themselves. And then they needed an outlet for that property since they knew they weren't capable of being in the property management business. So we worked together with them for what we believe is an outstanding outcome and a lesson for many other lakes that are seeing this type of development going on, who are calling us now saying, how did these guys at Gull Lake pull this off? And Lindsay and I were on a call today talking about that on Spooner Lake. So it's not going away. Next slide, please. One of the fun things I get to do is fun to relive old projects. So this year we transferred 3 projects to some of our conservation partners. It's a nice opportunity to look back. This is the Colfax Red Cedar Preserve and Recreation Area just outside the community of Colfax in eastern Dunn County. And this was transferred to the town of Colfax last year after Landmark purchased it about 1.5 years ago or so. Next slide, please. This is the Chimney Rock Conservation Area, which we protected about, 4 or 5 years ago, I think, with the Associated Conservation Clubs of Trempealeau County. The ACCT Club is a consortium of 9 fish and game organizations that piece together almost 1,000 acres in that particular corner of Trempealeau County to bridge the gap between 2 existing wildlife management areas. So when you talk about building complexes, those guys knew exactly what they were doing. And it was so much fun to work with those 9 clubs to protect this property and then add it on to their complex last year. Next slide, please. The last transfer I'm going to talk about is the 10 Mile Creek, 120 acres we donated to the feds last year, to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. These 2 projects, one was 40 acres and one was 80 acres, came together over about 4 or 5 years. and represents a lot of hard work, not only by Landmark, but our conservation partners in that area, which included folks like Star Prairie Fish and Game, Kinnickinnick Chapter of Pheasants Forever, National Wild Turkey Federation, Willow River Rod and Gun Club, Willow River Rehab District. I could probably keep going, as well as a very generous landowner. And this represents about a $500,000 donation, which will be managed for prairie and wetland. Next slide, please.
Rick, I'm going to backtrack you to the land management and preserves. I think they were a little out of sync. So here we go.
Okay,
Surprise.
I'll let
Yep.
you do that.
There you go.
Okay, yep. One important part that I forgot to talk about, managing our land. So in addition to the 25,000 acres or so of conservation easements we oversee, we have about 20 nature preserves and a little over 2,000 acres. Some of these places are what we internally refer to as ambassador sites. They're places that we're going to invest in and get a lot of attention from Landmark and a tremendous amount of public use. Places like the Devil's Punch Bowl, like the Brownstone Trail, like Tyler Forks, we're going to continue to invest in. Other places, you know, maybe people have or haven't heard of them. They're smaller, they're tucked away, they get use, but more local use. And, you know, we're going to continue to manage them. We're going to continue to invest incrementally in them, but not as much as we will in our ambassador sites. And then, of course, there's a spectrum in the middle that gets, you know, a moderate amount of attention. Like anybody who's in the business of managing for public land, our preserves saw a tremendous surge in use under COVID. When kids were out of school, when parents were out of work, when people weren't traveling out of state on vacation, they hit our preserves pretty hard, and we're tickled. We're really thrilled to see that use, but at the same time, it comes at an expense, and not just a financial expense, but it can be hard on the land. So that's a big part of what we're doing at the Punch Bowl, is trying to make it more resilient to the high visitation numbers it gets. We continue to do some restoration and habitat projects as well. And of course, ownership of anything, whether you consider it a conservation easement or land, doesn't come without administrative work. Next slide. This slide just represents some of the investments we're making at some of our community forests in the north. These are some of Landmark's larger holdings: Tyler Forks, North Pikes Creek, and Lincoln Community Forest, 2 in Bayfield, 1 in Ashland. We're continuing to invest in trails at all 3 of them. At Tyler Forks, trails need to actually be constructed, whereas at Lincoln Community, the trails are in place, and we're actively working with the Friends of Lincoln Community Forest, another nonprofit that works with us to improve the trails there. Erica has undertaken planting of conifers at all 3 properties, again, to boost the resilience of the forest community there in light of climate change. And we continue to do some other things like invasive species removal, working with the Friends of Lincoln on gate installation and increased signage. And I think I then have one more slide.
Yep. Just a
Kristen, I
second
don't know
here.
what happened there.
I know, I don't either, but this is, I think, where you want to end up.
Yeah, thank you. Lastly, we took on 6 conservation easements and 1 owned property following our merger with Coudray Waters Regional Land Trust. Most of those projects, I believe, are in the, I'm going to call it the Lakes region between Hayward and the Chippewa flowage. And the merger obviously not only brings new protected land to our portfolio, which is exciting, but it brings the talent and enthusiasm of the Coudray Waters board and supporters. You know, I think when I look at the projects we've got underway now, that merger really elevated the importance of the region and jump-started some great projects. So with that, I'm going to turn the, are you going to introduce, or should I introduce, Kristen?
You can go right ahead, Rick.
Okay, with that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, which is part of that talent and enthusiasm that came from Coudray Waters, with Carol Heinrich, who served as their board chair, took them through the merger with Landmark, and now is Landmark Conservancy's newest board member. Take it away, Carol.
Thank you, Rick. Coudray Waters Regional Land Trust was incorporated in 2002. An interested group of like-minded landowners and lawyers came together with the mission of protecting and promoting preservation of the natural environment of Northwest Wisconsin through land conservancy. The initial focus of the group was to preserve the integrity of La Quarter Isles and Grindstone Lakes. Many resorts and larger single-owned properties were being sold and divided, creating more pressure on the land and the lake. In April 2004, a 501c3 license was obtained. That same year, the protection focus extended to the Chippewa flowage as Coudray Waters, the Chippewa Flowage Property Owners Association, and the LCO tribe worked together on the Save the Islands project. Through this joint project, a number of islands on the Chippewa flowage were protected with the help of the Wisconsin DNR. Following the Big Timber project, Coudray Waters established 4 easements and 1 fee simple property. 2 properties on LCO and 2 properties on the Chippewa flowage were established. Another agreement developed with the Weiss Community Library Trail System in the township of Hayward. Coudray Waters moved forward with another joint project with UW Stevens Point. Through a grant, the Moose Lake Islands were surveyed to determine ownership on some of the unknown islands. The mindset was to consider the need for long-term preservation of the islands. With the workload increasing, the board of 9 volunteers saw a need to establish a part-time position to coordinate the protection efforts. From 2010 through 2012, the board did fundraising to hire a part-time staff person. A coordinator was hired in 2013 with the hope of 20 hours per month would gradually move to a more permanent position. By 2015, the board and the coordinator saw the organization was stagnated. In an effort to revive, we reviewed and revised the 2007 strategic plan. At that time, our focus was to put in place a strong educational component to be more visible in the community and draw attention to our revised mission statement, protecting and promoting the natural environment in Northwest Wisconsin. Within that framework, we established a goal of increasing our time to find and establish easements. At that time, the board made the commitment to become more of a presence in the Hayward community. We became members of the Hayward Chamber of Commerce and began attending their monthly business gatherings. We began to hold and sponsor events like the Film Festival and NRF's Paddles, and continue to have a presence at the annual Area Lakes Forum. Board members reached out to area lake associations and attended their meetings. With the increase of notoriety came more inquiries on protecting land. Being an organization of all volunteers and 1 very part-time coordinator, we were a fish out of water when it came to writing and completing a competent easement. We reached out to Northwoods Land Trust, Gathering Waters, and the Land Trust Alliance for assistance. Peter McKeever became our mentor and consult as we walked through the easement process on our final easement. In 2017, we procured a LEAP grant to help with an organizational assessment. Through the grant, we hired Sarah Wilson as a consultant. Through surveys, phone conversations, and a 2-day workshop, we were able to find our strengths and weaknesses, which led to the discussion of how to proceed for the future of Coudray Waters Regional Land Trust. After much discussion, we came to the conclusion that our best avenue was to look at merging. Through Gathering Waters and the Land Trust community, we had established relationships with West Wisconsin Land Trust and Bayfield Regional Conservancy. This seemed to be the most logical place to start having conversations. At the time, West Wisconsin and Bayfield were converging to become Landmark. We established contact and began dialogue, knowing the process would take a few years. Here we are in 2021, and the mission has been completed. Thank you to all the hard work of the Landmark Board, Landmark staff, and the Coudray Waters Regional Land Trust Board that brought this to a conclusion for the strengthening of land protection in our area.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you so much for your dedication and thoughtfulness. And we're just thrilled to have your membership and your conservation easements under the umbrella of Landmark, as well as you as an addition to our board. It's been a successful initiative that was undertaken, and we're pleased to move forward with a stronger presence in Sawyer County and specifically Hayward and that region. So moving along to the next portion of our agenda, I have the privilege of talking about our Landmark strategic plan. And this is our very first landmark strategic plan developed with leadership of our board and staff, with use of a hybrid of models, including matrix mapping, which helped us to evaluate mission connection to programming, as well as long-term financial sustainability. So this landmark strategic plan will guide our conservation work over the next 3 fiscal years, 2021 through 2024. Our first goal category, first of 3, is to sustain the commitments that we have already made to conservation in Wisconsin. As Lindsay and Rick have already said, when we protect land, we do it in perpetuity. And so we will invest in maintaining high quality stewardship of existing conservation easements and preserves. And we will accomplish this through increasing our easement stewardship and defense fund so that it fully covers our annual stewardship, defense, and management costs. In addition, we will be recruiting and training additional volunteer conservation easement monitors in targeted areas to help increase our staff capacity. In addition, as part of our goal of sustainability, we will be renewing our accreditation, our national accreditation with the Land Trust Accreditation Commission. Our next goal category is focused on growth. And Landmark will protect new high quality lands through conservation easement and acquisition. First, and most importantly, to accomplish this, we need to add staff. So our conservation team is in the process of growing from 3 to 5 permanent full-time positions. And we're also adding a position to support advancement and operations. We're leveraging new technologies to increase staff efficiency and effectiveness, and we are continuing outreach to landowners in our focus areas for climate resiliency. Also, as part of our growth strategy, we're increasing our land fund to better position the organization to respond to new conservation opportunities that come our way. We currently have about $53,000 in our land fund, and we anticipate growing that to a target of $86,000 this year, with the long-term goal to reach $250,000. We plan to expand on our previous legacy giving initiatives as well, to create high impact opportunities for supporters to help strengthen our work. And finally, the third group of strategies is related to engagement. Landmark will host programming that engages community members and partners on protected properties. As you heard from Sarah earlier in the meeting, we're pleased to be already underway in these efforts. And as part of the strategic plan, we will be enhancing our public engagement, developing comprehensive management plans that include visitor experiences. We will educate people about the role of land protection in sustaining biodiversity, recreation, quality of life, and ecosystem services. Building public interest in strategic areas within our region, and Landmark will strengthen partnerships where organizational values are aligned with potential opportunities. Finally, as part of engagement, we will be developing tangible ways for donors to invest in our projects and initiatives. A key example of this is the Brownstone Trail, where we're actively engaging with partners and working on long-term opportunities for donors to invest. So this is just a brief summary, and you can look for more communications from us later in the fall, early winter, when we share our impact report. We'll have a summary a little more in depth perhaps for you to review. And we, as Lindsay said, this won't be put on the shelf gathering dust. This is really an active plan that we intend to refer back to and set monthly, quarterly, and annual goals to really keep us moving ahead. So you can look forward to having us check back and reporting on various progress, particularly at our annual meetings. So next up, I'm going to hand it back to Rick Remington as well as Erica Lang. And we're looking ahead to the current year now, 2021 through June of 2022. And we've got a lot going on. So we will just kind of hit the high spots, and Rick, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. So, I've done this type of talk a number of times over the years, and just to kind of remind everybody, permanent conservation is a really dynamic process. We have folks contact our office every week with ideas, ideas of things that we should buy, or of land we should accept as a donation, or of things that somebody wants to sell. Sometimes it's somebody who doesn't own land, but they have ideas about what somebody else should do with their land. And it's really up to, the conservation staff as sort of the first line of defense, if I can call it that, to sort of try to listen to all those inquiries and, weed through them all and see which projects might be in the best interest of Landmark, and also just might be the most effective use of our capacity and our resources to instill permanent protection on in some way, shape, or form. And so when that happens, when the conservation staff feels like something is a great project and is ready to get traction, we move that up the hill to our conservation committee, which is a subset of our board, where we continue to gain traction on it. And then ultimately the decision of whether to execute that permanent acquisition or conservation easement goes to our full board of directors. So it's a long and dynamic process. Green dots will pop on this list, and sometimes they'll pop off and they will die on the vine, and new ones will come on. And it's not necessarily a straightforward process, but we do our best. I'm going to talk about just a couple of these, because some of them have been on this list for a couple of years. Some of them are newbies to be added, but Erica and I are going to talk about a couple of projects underway, as well as a couple of infrastructure projects we've got underway as well. Next slide, please. So Elk Creek Bottoms, this is one I'm really excited about. I get really excited talking about the lower Chippewa River that runs through the southern part of our 20-county area. This particular project is on the Dunn-Eau Claire County line. It's within the lower Chippewa River Conservation Opportunity Area, the LC Land Legacy Place, the lower Chip Important Bird Area. It's at the outlet of Elk Creek at the Chippewa River. I believe there's cultural resources on the property. And we have a really willing landowner to work with, which is the Midwest Institute for Scandinavian Culture, who has owned and managed this property for, about 40 plus years, I believe, in kind of a quasi-public situation. And they're looking for sort of, the next organization or entity to continue their legacy of sound management, and went through a really thoughtful process of vetting us and vetting what our intentions would be for that property. Next slide, please. With part of our emphasis being climate resilience, I of course have to look at, the climate resilience of just about every project that we entertain using that Nature Conservancy decision support tool. And, I draw the rough shape out, and you can see on the little meters there, it's just about all the way at the bottom on climate resilience. It's well above average in local connectedness. That's the middle meter. And on landscape diversity, it's actually off the charts. Like, you can't see it down there. I don't know what happened to the needle, but it buried itself. Because of all the different niche communities on this property, the variety of slopes, the aspects, the moisture regimes, the soils, the different riparian diversity associated with a small cold water trout stream and the big warm water Chippewa, you have all these niche habitats for species movement, migration, and adaptation. So it gets me really excited. And I think it confirms what, a lot of times us practitioners do when we go on site and we get that gut feeling that it's a good project. but to use a tool like this, which will sort of substantiate that and tell us that what we felt in the field is actually a good thing. A little bit downstream with this, from this, probably about, maybe about 5 or 6 miles or so. There's a project we've been working on, for many years now, with our partners at the Department of Natural Resources, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, local sportsmen conservation groups, the Lower Chip Alliance, and our partners who are the seller, which is Xcel Energy. And, I get a lot of calls about folks who are inquiring on the status of that. And all I can say to people, since it's been such a long process and we had some opposition in state government early on, is that we've adapted the project. We think we see a successful path forward for a slimmed down version of our earlier project. And I really hope to have some solid details to release to folks soon. Our partners at Xcel have been very patient, and it's been really good to work closely with department staff on what I think will be a really successful outcome. Next slide. So Sarah talked a little bit earlier about the Devil's Punch Bowl campaign. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the campaign itself, except to just say what a breath of fresh air it was to watch Kristen and Sarah go to town on their campaign. I would have beat my head against the wall trying to find, the project or the money to get this project done. And, not only did they raise the dollars that we needed to reconstruct the stairway and start to build a little matching endowment at the Community Foundation of Dunn County, but also just the level of visibility of not only Landmark, but of the Punch Bowl through the process. So just what a wonderful breath of fresh air. And I hope I can do them proud by actually getting this stairway built this fall. So where things are at is I've got a licensed builder, a very reputable large builder who is willing to work with the UW Stout Construction Management Program to actually do construction. We're hoping on this fall, now that the students are back, the student groups are starting to meet again, and we're hoping to get this done before freeze up. One of the neat parts is we're also working with a local lumber supplier who has a source for local black locust, which is a native but invasive tree that's highly resilient to rot. And so we're hoping to build this out of local non-preserved wood, which will be just as hardy as treated wood that you get from Menards or Fleet Farm or whatever. So it's really exciting. If the stars align, we'll have the stairway built this fall. If we hit a glitch, we'll pick it up again next spring, but I'm really optimistic at this point. Next slide. Over in Eau Claire, one of our, what we hope will be one of our ambassador sites that we're investing in is the Mary Fitz Memorial Park. This is south of Eau Claire, about 5 minutes or so, just 5 miles south of the interstate, where we're doing prairie restoration and have a prescribed fire scheduled for next spring. Next slide, please. Here's a quick map of the 80-acre Mary Fitz property. Over the past couple of years, we have planted and maintained prairie. For those of you who have done prairie restoration work or witnessed it, it's pretty ugly in its early stages. It's weedy, it's messy, it's not very showy, and that's exactly what we've had the last couple of years. When we hopefully get our prescribed fire executed next spring, it says spring 2021, but it'll be spring 2022 when the fire takes place. We're hoping it'll clean out some of the woody debris. We're probably still going to have to continue some mechanical removal, but we're really excited to start to plan for public infrastructure to share this place once it gets a little more showier and we get a little further ahead on the prairie restoration work. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my coworker, Erica Lane, who will talk about happenings in the north. Erica, are you there?
Sorry, now I'm here.
Oh, there she is. She scared me.
Sorry,
I thought I was going to handle brown stuff.
I'm Erica and I work out of the Bayfield office. Thanks, Rick, for introducing me. So with the Brownstone Trail, this is one of our ambassador properties, and we continue to be very engaged with the Brownstone Trail and of course the community of Bayfield. As many of you know on the call, this is a legacy project for Bayfield Regional Conservancy. And it's really just a great way to connect with the community, with those people that Sarah and Kristen like us to connect with, and a way to also raise appreciation for land protection and natural resources when we do connect people to nature. So each year we identify and implement a work plan on the trail with the help of several folks on this call. I'm going to give a big shout out to Rex Dollinger because I think you're still on the call. And here are some things that we've done with a couple of them still in progress. So we installed some new signage finally on the large kiosk at what we call the beginning of the trail, but it's one end of the trail. Also a new sign at the end of the trail, the other end of the trail, and also along the reroute that many people know about. We did several trail work days through the Bayfield Area Trails Group. This great group has been organized for a couple of years now, and it's just a really great way to steward the trails in the Bayfield region and also to recruit volunteers. So it's no longer Landmark just having to do all this, which is fantastic. We placed gravel in several locations, some of which was just 2 weeks ago. And thank you to Rex and his family in memory of Peg Dollinger, who really loved the trail and always was out there helping to steward it. As Sarah mentioned, we are partnering on a shoreline inventory and analysis, which is really being led by Northland College to help identify risk and opportunities. This will be completed this fall. We've already gotten some preliminary results. We have learned that there's additional erosion and slumping near Seagull Bay Motel. So the idea is for this study to really help make the community even more aware of the tenuous nature of the shoreline and how that affects the trail, and to also bring us all together to have a bigger conversation about the sustainable nature of the trail long term. We also did invasive plant inventory and continued removal along the Brownstone Trail, something that we've done many years, oftentimes on private properties in partnership with those private landowners. We really focused on garlic mustard. Unfortunately, there's one of the largest populations of garlic mustard in Bayfield County on the Brownstone Trail, on city land and also on the hotel property. And then also targeting purple loosestrife, buckthorn, and honeysuckle primarily. We've also continued to try to engage, or we're doing our best to engage with the community. It's a small community, but there's a lot of different ways to engage with it. So oftentimes it's challenging to make sure everyone is hearing the same information and hearing it correctly. And we've been using tools like our website, Facebook post, Bayfield Area Trails website, Chamber Blast, and everything that you can possibly think of. Also the game of telephone, where someone calls one person and they spread it to another person. And then we're doing trail easement renewals as needed. Luckily, most of the trail easements on the Brownstone Trail are perpetual. So they're tied with the title of the land forever, which is fantastic. However, a couple do have term limits, and we will be working to see if those landowners are willing to sign perpetual easements, as that's really in the community's best interest when spending resources on this recreational trail. And of course, we continue to work on the slump, what we call affectionately the slump project. As many of you know, we had a community meeting last summer, and we've identified that the best solution is to try to purchase the adjacent upland property, since we do need a lot of room to lay the slope back to do even minimal restoration work that will be stabilizing. We've completed an appraisal and we're in talks with the landowner, and our board has agreed to make an offer, and Lindsay and I are going to work on that, and we'll see how that goes. And if it's accepted, we'll be fundraising with the community, as this is very much a community asset and a community responsibility, and it's going to require quite a bit of fundraising over the next year or two. Okay. Sorry, I've got two screens open, so this is also a little bit hard for me to figure out where we are. Thank you, Kristen. So another great project that we are working on that Lindsay alluded to, as did Rick, is the Telemark Preserve. This is a 200-acre property. We have been affectionately calling it the Telemark Preserve. We have to name all of our projects because it's easier to track them that way. Earlier this spring, we were contacted by concerned citizens in the Cable area. A couple of you who are on the phone, Carol, Patrick, Frank, as well as natural resource partners, about the fate of this forested property. This property originally was purchased by the America Birkebeiner Ski Foundation just recently, and they were interested in selling the property to create revenue for recreational improvements that they wanted to do on their other property further to the east. So they were doing a solicitation of bids from interested buyers. And some of that did include from developers that would lead to the property being lightly developed for residential homes. And a lot of folks in the community didn't want to see that. And so they called Landmark Conservancy to see if we could help with conservation options. We decided to submit a bid to purchase the property, and it was accepted. We can happily say it was accepted with the goal of conservation. We entered into a land contract, and that must be realized by the end of the year. And I think, Kristen, you're going to give a little fundraising update about this. Next slide. I think it's the next slide. Yes, thank you. Sorry, Kristen, previous slide. Didn't quite get to all of it. There, thank you. So a little bit more about this property. So the property is in kind of the coral pink color. That's the property that we are raising money. We've already started the purchase of the property, but a land contract means that we still owe some money on it. And then the America Birkebeiner Ski Foundation property is in the light blue to the east, and that's property that they will continue to own. And then all of this is tied together or connected to the Bayfield County forested property, and then also to the Sawyer County forested property to the south. And then you also see on this map the St. Croix National Scenic Riverway, which is a protected area. So as far as connectivity, this was an opportunity to connect a larger unfragmented forest as part of a larger complex. The property also has some existing trail infrastructure, which is really exciting because it's a way to get people out on the land. It has a Canva trail. It also has a snowmobile trail that we're trying to learn more about in terms of its use. And it also has a Birkebeiner Ski Foundation, or excuse me, the Birkebeiner Trail, the main Birkebeiner Trail cutting through the property under the power line corridor. It's very close to cable, as many of you know, probably are familiar with the property, and close to Highway 63. And as I mentioned, it is going to take community fundraising to pull this off. Go ahead, Kristen. So we're also, as far as future management of the Telemark Preserve, we're super excited to be the stewards of this property. We intend to own it at least for the near future. Haven't really thought about what that looks like after that. It will be open to the public for recreational uses, including cross-country skiing, hiking, snowshoeing, and wildlife watching. We do intend to retain the Canva Trail. It's a popular bike trail that connects to a larger bike trail network in the area. We will be having some community discussion, as I mentioned, of the snowmobile trail, just to understand its use, to understand how popular it is. May add a few potential additional short trails, but as Rick pointed out, we always have to think about how much management and how much maintenance we want to do. So we really need to think about that first. And our goal is to really encourage a mixed, healthy, older forest with climate resilient species. And this is a property that also sort of blinked green, if you will, on our climate resiliency data. So it's already trending in the right direction. It already has some older species, 60 to 80-year-old species, including quite a bit of oak and quite a bit of white pine. So we're really excited about that. We're also really excited, Sarah probably more than anyone on staff, to engage the community. There's a lot of opportunities to foster increased awareness of land protection, climate resiliency, healthy forest management, and those types of things. So we're really excited about the property. All right, and then turn it over to Kristen. She can talk about the next steps. I get to do the easy stuff, the ecology.
All right. Well, thank you, Erica. And we're about wrapped up with our formal presentation portion of the evening. I have the pleasure of closing on this note, which is that we are very actively fundraising to fulfill our commitment to purchase this 218-acre property that is the former Mount Telemark property adjacent to the American Birkebeiner Foundation trails. As Erica mentioned, we did sign a land contract this summer, and we were able to fund the initial payment thanks to a group of committed supporters that were very much front runners in helping get this project off the ground. The needle has moved a little bit since the creation of this graphic. We're at about $265,000 raised, and we are very actively fundraising in the next couple of months to fulfill our commitment with 2 additional payments due this fall. We have secured a loan to extend us some flexibility with our fundraising timeline, and we do have a couple of grants pending as well. We will be reaching out to our base of supporters, which are you all, in the coming weeks. And so stay tuned for some more communication about how you can help us to finalize this purchase in the coming months. We have a couple of events in the works too, including a virtual meeting that will be held most likely in early October on Zoom. And we are anticipating an outdoor community hog roast that we're finalizing the date for, most likely in mid-October in Cable. So if you are local or able to travel to Cable, please watch for information about that as well. Please contact me with any questions. And thank you so much for all you do to support our work, and in particular for considering a gift for this project. So I'm going to move to our final slide here of the presentation. Thanks for hanging in there with us for a lot of formal speaking. And I guess I will refer to Sarah, who has been tracking comments in the chat, and see if we have anything that has come up over the course of our presentation that we can address to the group.
We have not had any questions that need to be addressed for the full group. So if anybody wants to drop one in the chat bar, you certainly can.
And if you are able to unmute or raise your hand, or I guess we've got just about 5 minutes remaining, so I don't want to go completely off the rails willy-nilly, but if we have a couple of questions, we would sure love to hear from you.
Okay, how many acres is the Telemark and Elk Bottom properties? I know one of those answers. I think this is good for Rick to take.
Sure. Elk Creek Bottoms is 69 and Telemark is 218.
Can you expand on plans to share information and plans for the brownstone with the community?
I can try to field that one, and anyone can feel free to jump in and back me up. We have been actively exploring solutions for a more permanent reroute, and have been appreciative of people's patience with the detour that goes along the highway. As Erica mentioned, we are in the process of trying to make an offer on the adjacent property. And if we're able to be successful in that, we will be doing a topographic survey to evaluate how we can reroute the property, consulting with landscape architects, and engaging the community in a series of conversations of what a permanent reroute would look like. But a lot of the next steps hinge on how the potential acquisition will or will not move forward.
And I'll just jump in real quick too, Kristen.
Please.
Especially with the Brownstone Trail, just so we're clear too, we have hired a consultant to help us with the financial campaign related to the Brownstone. So they are under contract. They are having what we are calling quiet conversations with the community, so we can also ascertain the community's interest in the financial support, because we know it's going to take a collaborative effort. Separate from that, we're also excited that we do anticipate having a couple of, or maybe it's just one community design charrette that we're able to bring the community together and really hear from them, their interest with the property, and how we might move forward with other uses of that property, in addition to helping us reroute the Brownstone Trail so it is open year round. It's a pretty tricky site, and we know that acquisition of the property is essential to moving forward, but we also want to fully engage the community as we are working our way through solutions.
I
Okay,
see. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
is the Excel property the old proposed nuclear electoral generation site north of Durand?
Mhm.
Rick?
Yep, it's part of that property. So back when that property was a proposed nuke site, Northern States Power purchased about 5,000 acres. A lot of that is flat sandy farmland. The Department of Natural Resources picked up about 1,000 acres a few years ago along the river. This was phase 2 priority for acquisition. And it is part of that property. There are some degraded areas on it. It was heavily abused as an off-road and ATV site back, I want to say, in the 90s, maybe turn of the century. And that's, for the most part, been curtailed now, but some of those ruts and things still remain.
Thank you, Rick. Erica, I think you'd be best for this one. Can you update us on connecting Tyler Forks Community Forest with Copper Falls State Park? I'm wondering if that's the trail.
Yeah. Hi, Ann and Doug. So the landowners who sold us Tyler Forks Community Forest are on the phone. I just want to recognize you guys are fabulous. And you did a fabulous video that everyone hopefully saw on our website. Yeah, so this year we finished the Hemlock Loop Trail that's behind the cabin there. We are almost done with the river trail, and then we're hoping to continue to connect the river trail to Scott Taylor Creek, as where you guys both, this will register with them, maybe not everyone else. And then we also worked on the Scott Taylor Ridge Trail, which is across the creek towards the park. We are hoping this year, Ann and Doug, to be able to at least flag and do some minimal trail work to connect the Ridge Trail to Copper Falls State Park. And that would be kind of at the north part. It does connect to the south pretty well already, but that would be at the northern part of the Ridge Trail, and then go west towards the park. And everyone, this property is adjacent to Copper Falls State Park. So if you get to Copper Falls State Park, you really need to just go a little bit further east and go see this property. It has a parking area, really nice trails that are looking better every year. And then it also will be connected to the Doughboy Trail, which is kind of a big deal to Copper Falls State Park itself.
And if you want to come on Sunday,
yes,
the forest
yes.
ecology hike. And somebody signed up during this call, so spots are going fast.
Yay.
That's excellent.
Yeah. Any other questions? I don't see any more that haven't been answered.
I feel pretty proud of us being on time here, everyone. We felt like we had an ambitious quantity of information to share, and I think we've worked our way through. Thanks again to all of you for taking time out of your day to be with us and share in these updates. Thank you so much for your commitment to conservation in Wisconsin. As we've reflected on throughout this meeting, all of our work is truly done in partnership, and we couldn't do it any other way. We truly rely on the support of organizations and individuals, landowners, and this all, it takes a village. It's really a community effort. So thanks for all you do to stay connected, and please stay tuned for updates in the coming years. Please feel free to reach out to our team directly if you have any questions beyond what we've shared this evening. With that, I think we'll close. We will, as we said earlier, be sharing a recording of this. It might take a day or so to get that out to folks. So stay tuned for a recap, and feel free to share whether it's the meeting or other events and opportunities with people in your circles. We appreciate your help in getting the word out about our work.
Thank you for emceeing, Kristen.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Great job, everybody. Thanks,
Yep.
everybody.
Have a great evening.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.